Member Martinez-Beltran.
Thank you. Well, I sit on a number of boards, and I would say that I probably sit on more boards than most on this council. And that's the reason part of the reason why it's more. Additionally, as I explained the last time that we discussed this, I hadn't traveled prior as much because I have small children. And now that my children have gotten a little bit older, I have just this past year been away, started doing more traveling because I'm able to do that now. And that's not something that I was willing to do before. And while some council members may be able to afford their mileage on my $300 stipend, I have no shame in saying that's not something that I'm able to do, and aren't you lucky? I think that it's absolutely, the Latino Caucus is absolutely critical to what we're doing. We just touted and had a whole presentation on economic mobility, number one. I'm asked consistently about the Peninsula Division, which is for Santa Clara County, how we're able to get at the Latino Caucus some of the meetings that our division is not able to get and garner. I have incredible access because of that caucus that benefits Morgan Hill. I know that when I ran for Peninsula Division, you ran also, Mayor, you'll recall. And when I got that position, and so I question whether if you had gotten that position, if that would be something that, you know, there's additional costs that come as you serve and you represent the city.
Probably not, though.
Councilmember Spring did speak on this issue prior, and he has to leave on an early AM out of the country, so I don't think it's that it wasn't important to him. I think that he needs to be able to make his early AM flight. And I planned, as I said from the very get-go, that this should be something that we come back and have a discussion with the full council. Which this is the second time, because I don't think, Councilmember Liebers, you were here when we had that conversation the first time. I don't recall that you were here during that conversation. So it's not about giving more money. We've already been assigned this budget. What I'm asking is if, which Councilmember Spring had offered, if people do not use their budget, that I would be able to use those funds, which is what other cities have done. And the city that you're asking about is Sunnyvale, and I forwarded the policy to the staff months ago. And so I'm not asking for any additional budget. What he had said was, I don't use my budget, and Councilmember Spring is pretty active. He works full-time, however, as he said then, and so he does not use his full budget to travel and do things like that because that's a full-time job. But he was more than willing to share what he didn't use, and I'm, quite frankly, still perplexed as to why my colleagues would not allow him to do as such, and would not allow, if you hadn't used your pot, I would be happy to share my pot with someone who, if I hadn't used mine, so that we could continue to have impact for Morgan Hill at all levels of government. Regionally, again, I'm on ABAG. At the state, I serve as the legislative chair for SVCE as well as for the League of Cities. That is why, and that's why I'm asking, one, that we have this conversation, we have a full council, and two, that we should be able to share the budget. I don't see why we would limit other colleagues from being effective.
Well, I think we're going to make the decision tonight. Again, Councilmember Spring indicated he's okay with this conversation moving forward. In the last conversation we had, Councilmember Spring also indicated that council members should not be reimbursed for caucus involvement. So I think we already know where he stands on that.
This isn't about caucus involvement.
No, he brought it up, and I'm just saying that's where he stood on that.
Great, but let's be clear that this is about all of the boards that I serve on that benefit the city of Morgan Hill. This is not for caucus involvement. Well, so please don't distill it down to that.
All of us sit on boards and commissions that benefit the city of Morgan
Well,
Hill.
again, as I said, I think it would be imperative to look at how many boards that we're serving on and whether those boards are local, Mayor, or whether they travel and require travel, for example, to San Francisco or LA or otherwise. I think that would be a very critical piece of information to include.
I think we're pretty well
But we'll
decided.
hopefully have a chance to look at this policy again soon, won't we?
I have a comment.
I'm not sure I understand that, but please go ahead.
I understand that it could financially be a burden on your particular family, but I want to remind you that we are getting a significant raise come January, that you should be able to afford to pay anything you need over the $3,000. So
I don't think so. So I often pay for childcare when I have things that I need to attend for the city.
whole thing. Okay.
That's right, it's a personal thing.
Paying for your childcare. I'm sorry.
Well, I know where you stand on the issue now, Marilyn, but again,
You have a
I'm
mother?
I'm not asking you.
Husband, okay, you do not work full-time, okay? So although you say all the time, you do work, I have a job, I own a company, you use that all the time. But yet you have decided to diverse yourself in all these different things. You have to set your own priorities that fit within our strict budget. And I'm not willing to share mine, because what if the very last month of the fiscal year, I decide I want to use mine, and I've already given you mine? No, I'm not going to share mine.
Well, then we could look again at many of these policies have where you're able to put that into the next year. And that's what I'm asking, is that we look at that as a council rather than from the me perspective. So thank you for weighing in on my family and my mother and my father and the support that I have, and whether or not you feel in your generation that I have a job or not, but I do. I do have a job.
No, but you made these
Thank you.
choices, okay?
That's correct. I've made these choices, and I made the choice to serve here, and I serve quite fully here. In fact, I would say that I do quite a bit, Marilyn, for the city of Morgan Hill, and I'm not sure what organizations that you're talking about that you're on, why you wouldn't be at $3,000. But I can tell you, when I have flights to chair the state Housing Policy Committee, when I go to San Francisco, when I go to Sacramento, when I'm out to Monterey for League Leaders or Burbank, those things add up very quickly.
Well, hopefully the raise that we're getting in January will help you.
Okay, so
No,
with
I
that all
don't think
being
it
said,
will. I'm
all that
on-
being said, I think
Our
that we...
family is on one income for 5 people. If I need to share with the public,
Shut that down, Mayor.
Yeah, we have a point of order.
my
And so-
family is on one income. So no, it is not significant in the Bay Area, where it's $141,000 a year that you earn to be AMI affordable housing.
Okay, so where we're at now is, what is it you need from the council? I think we have a pretty good understanding of where the council's going here with regard to the spending limit. Do you need a formal vote? What is it you need from us?
So does the council want to bring back a formal policy or just give us direction now? Included the definitions of allowable expenditures, those sub-bullets represent the reimbursements that we've received in the past. Are all of those okay? Is one question, and the second question is, can allocations be shared? And I think we've heard on that one.
And just to be clear, the only current policy is that it's $3,000 per council member. That's what's budgeted, but there's no policy other than that, beyond just the regular what's allowable by the IRS.
Okay, so what we're saying, so what you would need from us is, if it feels like we're saying we want to leave that policy in place, right? Am I hearing that?
Or not have a policy, because right now there is no policy.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought you said the policy that we currently have.
The budget's $3,000.
Got it.
So there is no policy. The budget has $3,000.
Budget has that. We would, okay, so we would define a policy here. And again, I just want to know, what is it you're looking for? Is it direction, or do you want a formal vote?
Yeah, direction is fine.
Okay.
We need to know, do we reimburse for all those expenditures that are up there, is one question. And then the second question, which I think has been answered, is related to sharing.
Okay, well, I think we have a pretty good idea. Well, let me ask. It sounds like no sharing.
Correct.
I feel strongly no sharing. So I think we have the majority there, and that is not, there would be no sharing, it's 3,000 max. As for, now, one of the other options here is we could say $3,000, use it how you will within all of that. And
that's the current policy, as long as it's reimbursable by the IRS.
okay, but then again, we would be saying
And
3,000.
within the scope of being a council member, which primarily is related to outside assignments, the League of California Cities Association. It's not just generic leadership classes, basically.
Got it, got it. So let me ask my colleagues, how would you feel about that? If we just said, hey, if she wants to go to the caucus, and again, it's $3,000. If she goes over 3,000 for anything else, it's on that council member who goes over the 3,000. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think this system has been working for many years, and it's been effective for many years. So,
Keep in mind, we have not had the $3,000 limit. It's been more of a pool that we've had in place.
That's correct.
But
You're changing it to limit.
but we've always went to some of the same places together. You know, like the League of California Cities, you know.
Yeah, and that again, we have that 10,000 set aside for that. This is based on the 15,000 remaining of what would be the pool that we're now saying $3,000 per council member to use for league, policy, caucus, those things related and somewhat related specifically to city assignments.
Mayor, may I add something?
Sure.
We could say that we are okay with sharing, but it's individually up to us whether we want to share it.
I would disagree with that simply because the only reason is we've got to set a policy that's across the board.
Okay.
That's my only concern there. If we say let's just go back to having a pool of money. Otherwise, it's got to be a policy that I think is not up for question. Is my only concern with that.
I agree that you could share it. There's no you're just basically trying to put in a policy to limit the spending. We currently have operated for the past 6 years with a combined pool. We've never had an issue with that, with the council members. And now we want, for some reason, to put a limit on a council member.
But the problem
There's no
is,
request that you, let me finish, please. There's no request that you have to give your pool of money or offer any. But if you are someone who would like to work and be collegial, you certainly would have that option. Again, this is something that other cities have as well.
so with that, it is only up until this year that suddenly your expenses skyrocketed.
I just
Prior
explained
to
why.
that, I'm not done, please let me finish. Prior to that, it's been $3,000 or less. So I think it's been consistent, and I think we should maintain a consistent sort of approach to this so that, again, we're not trying to figure out who's got this, who's got that. Again, it can always be addressed in the future. If the 3,000 isn't working, we can come back and visit it another time. But I think we're on board with no sharing. I think we're on board with $3,000 limit per council member. Am I getting a sense of that from at least the majority?
You mean limiting it and changing from a pool, it wasn't 3,000, it was a pool.
We'll call it a
And now
policy.
you're trying, there was
A policy.
There was a pool of money that council members used for the past 6 years that I am aware. We never had an issue, and now you would like to limit that to $3,000.
We'd like to implement a
Let's be clear
policy.
in what we're doing. Now you would like a policy to limit that to $3,000.
You can call it what you will, Councilmember. I think we have a pretty good sense of where we're going with this. What more do you need from us? Is that it?
Nothing further.
Okay, very good. That is, then I think we're done with our items. If there are no other, then the meeting is now, oh, I'm sorry, please. Oh, public comment. Doug is waiting to go, man. Sorry.